Hello guys, how are you? Welcome to GeoMind. In this video, we will start the part 2 of Permian period. Okay, so if you haven't watched the part first, please make sure that you watch it. And if you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. Okay, so I've already made the videos on Cambrian till Carboniferous period and also on the Precambrian history of Earth. So if you want, you can check it out later. I will provide the link at the end of the video. Okay. So in the previous video, I've already described this creature you see here. Okay, it's a Dimetrodon, and we will talk about this dude later in the video. Okay, so let's start with the questions that I gave you during the first part of the video. So the question first was, snowball Earth happened during which period? So the correct answer is Cryogenian period. Okay. It comes under the Neoproterozoic era. Ammonites went extinct during which period? So answer is Cretaceous period. Okay. Then we talked about the time scale, stratigraphy correlation of the Carboniferous Permian boundary. Then we talked about some introduction about the Permian times. Okay. The extinction that happened in the late Permian. Then we talked about the paleogeography, formation of Pangaea, all those things, land distribution of land. Okay. And then we talked about the paleoclimate, and then I briefed about the life forms during the Permian times, and then in today's video we will talk about life in detail. Okay, so before jumping to the life forms, I want to talk about these two things, synapsids and diapsids. Okay, so you can see here, this is a Dimetrodon. Okay, very famous example of Permian period. So synapsids are, you have to remember that synapsids are animals that have only one hole behind their eye socket. Okay, so example, there are modern mammals such as horse, okay, kangaroos or humans, and diapsids are those which have two holes behind their eye socket. Okay, such as dinosaurs or birds. Okay, now let's talk about it. So you will know why these two are important, because in the Permian times the reptile were very common. Okay, they diversified. So the most important event of the Permian period was the rise of synapsid reptile. Okay, so synapsids are, why they are important, because they are the common ancestor of mammals. Okay, and why diapsids are important, because they are the common ancestor of dinosaurs. Okay, so these two were present at the Permian times. Even though they appeared during the late Carboniferous period, they became very diversified during the Permian times. Okay, so during early Permian, these synapsids resembled crocodiles. Okay, so if you see here the Dimetrodon, if you see here the Dimetrodon, these looks like a type of dinosaur, but they are actually not. Okay, they are mammals. Okay, so earlier paleontologists were confused between these two, but later they figured it out. Okay, so archosaurs were a type of diapsids, and archosaur were a common ancestor of first dinosaur or birds or crocodiles. Okay, so archosaur also appeared during the Permian times. If we talk about the amphibians, they, as you know, amphibians love to live in the moist environment. Okay, but increasingly dire condition of the Permian period were not hospitable to these prehistoric amphibians. Okay, so they were outcompeted by more adaptable reptiles. So reptiles are more adaptable to dry environment, as you can say, because they lay eggs in the terrestrial dry environment, while the amphibians lay eggs in the aquatic environment, and they live the dual life. Okay, so as we have discussed in the first video, okay, the life cycle of an amphibian. So they become increasingly extinct during the late Permian, the amphibians. So two types of amphibians were most common: Europs and Diplocolus. Okay, so talking about the insects, insects were also common but not as diversified as in the Mesozoic era. So later insect will diversify, but their size was also small. Okay, in Carboniferous period, there were almost 2 feet long Meganeura. Meganeura was a type of dragonfly. Okay, and due to high oxygen level in the O2 levels were high in the Carboniferous period, their size became very large. Okay, these dragonflies and other insects like scorpions became very large, but in Permian times they were not those not that large. So cockroaches were there in the Permian times, giant cockroaches were there. Okay, but their size weren't quite as impressive as their plus size forebears of the earlier Carboniferous period. Okay, now here is a beautiful chart of synapsids and diapsids. So we will take a closer look at it. So you can see here, even though synapsids and diapsids appear during the Pennsylvanian, that is late Carboniferous period, they were diversified during the Permian period. Okay, so first we will talk about the synapsids. So as synapsids branched off into pelycosaurs and therapsids. So pelycosaurs were synapsids such as Dimetrodon. Okay, so Dimetrodon is here. This is Dimetrodon, and it was a synapsid, an apex predator. Okay, and it was from pelycosaur family. While this guy was a therapsid. Okay, so therapsids and pelycosaurs were different, but they evolved from the synapsids. Okay, here you can see. Then these therapsids then evolved to stem mammals, that is the common ancestors of all the mammals. And then these stem mammals evolved into different types of mammals. As you can see, placentals, marsupials, and monotremes. So monotremes are those mammals which lay eggs, such as platypus. Marsupials are those mammals which carry their baby in their pouch. Okay, and then there are placental mammals such as humans, rats, okay, primates, or all types of mammals you can say. And if we talk about the diapsids, diapsids evolved into archosaurs, that is primitive dinosaurs, and lepidosaurs. Okay, so dinosaurs evolved into birds, crocodiles. Okay, and there were turtles too. So turtles you can say are distant relative of dinosaurs. Okay, so here is a brief idea about synapsids and diapsids. Then let's talk about the life during the terrestrial life during the Permian period. So here is Dimetrodon, a classic example of Permian period. It is a sail-like structure in its back, and it acted like a thermoregulator. Okay, and it was an apex predator. It was a mammal, even though it looked like a dinosaur. Then there was Titanophenus. It literally means Titanic murderer. Okay, it was about 10 feet long. You can say a life-size example, and was very terrifying. Then there is Astemanosuchus, a very large omnivore therapsid. Okay, there were more, but these were common. Then talk about the archosaur. Archosaur were common ancestor of crocodiles, birds, and dinosaur. Okay, and it looked like this. Even turtles too. Okay, so this was a common ancestor of turtles, dinosaur, birds, and crocodiles. And talking about the marine life, so marine life were dominated by sharks such as Helicoprion, Xenocanthus. Okay, Helicoprion, Xenocanthus, and acanthodes. Okay, marine reptiles were scarce, but there might be one named as Claudiosaurus. Okay, so marine reptile population exploded during the Triassic period. Okay, so this is a Helicoprion shark, very famous. Okay, it has a very rounded type of jaw and very sharp tooth. Okay, a classic example of Permian period. And here is a marine reptile known as Claudiosaurus, though its existence is debated. Then talking about the plant life. So plant life was that lycopods, which were common during the Carboniferous period, transitioned to Glossopteris type of fauna. Okay, this is a Glossopteris tree, and these are lycospids. Now, because of the increasingly dry environment, as you know, lycospids love to live in this swampy type of environment. Okay, and Glossopteris were more adaptable to drier environment. So that's why this transition happened. Okay, so we'll not go much deeper into it. You just need to remember that there were transition from lycospids to Glossopteris type of flora, sorry. Okay, so ferns, conifers, and cycads type of tree were common. Now let's talk about the role of Permian flora and fauna in the evidence for continental drift. So as you know, the Alfred Wegener, the great scientist, hypothesized the continental drift, and he hypothesized that in earlier times all these continents were fused together. Okay, so the most important thing was that he collected fossils from Southern America and Africa. As you know, in today's world, these all are not jointed, and there are different fossils such as Glossopteris was a Permian fossil, Listosaurus was a late Permian fossil, okay, late Permian organism. Myxosaurus was a Permian fossil, okay, and this Cyanogathus was a Triassic fossil. So these three were Permian fossils, and they were most important in constructing the evidence for continental drift. Okay, so you can see here this Mesosaur were found in the southern part of the South America and in the southern part of Africa. So in today's world, it's separated by the sea. Okay, so he hypothesized that during that period of time, all these continents were joined together. That's why these mesosaurs were able to migrate from this portion to this portion. Okay, so if continental drift were not there, they will not be able to cross this ocean. Okay, because these are terrestrial or freshwater reptile. Okay, so they can't cross the sea water. So that's why he hypothesized that all these continents were once fused together. That is the Gondwana land. Okay, now we will talk about the Permian Triassic extinction, which is the Permian period famous for. So almost 96% of all life was perished. Okay, and it was mainly because of the Siberian traps. Okay, it was a continental flood type of you could say volcanic activity, and it spewed out massive amount of lava into the atmosphere, causing a runaway greenhouse gas effect. Okay, and CO2 began producing methane and another greenhouse gases. Sorry, bacteria that thrive on CO2 began producing methane and another greenhouse gas. So we will talk about it in more detail. So it happened during the late Permian, the Permian extinction, and it was the greatest extinction of among the all 5 extinctions. Okay, so it's also known as Great Dying, killed off 95% of all marine and 75% of all terrestrial species. Okay, marine environment was affected badly, and groups like acanthodi, trilobites, sea scorpions, fusilinids, a type of benthic foraminifera, tabulata and rugosa coros were totally wiped out. Okay, shelled animal were also affected, and you can see the number of percentage of that huge percentage of all these shelled animals were wiped out. Okay, 97% of ammonites, and terrestrial life was also hit hard, even okay, wiping large amount of tetrapod species. So, and wet forest such as lycospids we have discussed earlier were hit hard, okay, because of air in a hot climate. So let's talk about the causes. So first, the major cause was the hyperactive volcanism, okay, in the area known as Siberian traps. So At that time, the volcanic activity in the Siberia spewed out almost 70 lakh square kilometer of lava. Okay, about the size of Australia. So which is very huge, and it freed out massive amount of methane, CO2, H2S, okay, hydrogen sulfide, etc. All these gases have their own repercussions. So as you know, methane reacts with oxygen to produce CO2 and H2O, and because of it, the oxygen levels plummeted from 30% to 13%. Okay, and other gases also badly damage the ozone layer. So how they damage? As you know, ozone layer is affected badly by the halogens. Okay, so rising magma at that time captured the stored halogen, okay, in the rocks and spewed out them in the atmosphere, and which resulted in depletion of ozone and surge of UV radiation. Okay, so it was a cyclic effect, you can say. Finally, there was surge in methane. Okay, so methane, CH4, as you all know, and other greenhouse gases, okay, resulted in much hotter climate. So as climate is hotter, the oxygen will dissolve less in the sea water. Okay, so पहले तो क्या था, ऑक्सीजन का लेवल लो था, ऊपर से इन्वायरमेंट जो टेम्परेचर था वो और ज्यादा हाई हो गया था, तो सी जो था वो सी और ओशन यू कुड से दे started to, there was deoxygenation. Okay, so deoxygenation happened. Okay, so O2 was not that much dissolving into the seawater, so the marine life was affected. Okay, there was far less oxygen to absorb, plus the temperature was high. So anaerobic bacteria known as Methanosarsina flourished, and as this anaerobic bacteria, it means that it doesn't consume oxygen. Okay, so it generated hydrogen sulfide as a waste, and as you know, hydrogen sulfide is a toxic gas for marine sea life, marine flora and fauna, and also the terrestrial fauna. Okay, and then this increase in sulfide and CO2 causes increase in ocean acidity. As you know, CO2, if there is high CO2, okay, so pH will drop in the ocean. So there were high CO2 and high hydrogen sulfide, so pH levels plummeted and ocean became very acidic. Okay, so here is another chart. You can see here the emissions, okay, and various gases. Okay, so del 13 C ratio became negative. Okay, so this became negative and it implies that biological productivity plummets. Okay, so biological productivity बहुत कम हो चुकी थी क्योंकि C13 ज़्यादा हो गया था एटमॉस्फेयर में. तो आपको पता है कि प्लांट हो गया, एनिमल्स हो गया, वो C12 को ज़्यादा प्रेफर करते हैं, कार्बन 12 को. ठीक है, तो अगर कार्बन 12 क्या होगा, सो अगर ये नेगेटिव होगा तो इसका मतलब ये होगा कि कार्बन 12 ज़्यादा है एटमॉस्फेयर में. ओके, एंड कार्बन 12 ज़्यादा है तो इसका मतलब क्या है, बायोलॉजिकल प्रोडक्टिविटी कम है. ठीक है, और एक्सटिंक्शन हो रहा है. ठीक है, तो इसके बहुत सारे रिपरकशंस थे. यू कैन सी एल्गल ब्लूम हुआ. एल्गल ब्लूम अगर डाई करता है तो CO2 छोड़ता है और ऑक्सीजन कंज्यूम करता है. ठीक है, और एल्गल ब्लूम कैसे हुआ, सॉइल इरोजन हुआ. ठीक है, सॉइल इरोजन से क्या हुआ, न्यूट्रिशन ज़्यादा हुआ, एल्गी के पास न्यूट्रिशन आया, एल्गल ब्लूम हुआ, एल्गल ब्लूम एकदम से डाई हुआ तो ओशन एनॉक्सिया हो गया. ठीक है, और जिसका पूरा इफेक्ट मरीन लाइफ पे हुआ है. तो दैट्स इट फॉर पैलियोज़ोइक एरा. अगर आपको ये वीडियो पसंद आई है तो प्लीज़ लाइक, शेयर एंड सब्सक्राइब. ठीक है, थैंक यू.